Hey, lovies. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of A Little Perspective. And this is the last in a series that I've been doing about adoption. November is National Adoption Awareness Month, and I have previously spoke with Karina, who is a Canadian who was an adoptee. Jennifer is the mother of two adopted LP children with achondroplasia. And I've asked Kelsey to join us and talk about her experiences with international adoption and them bringing Calvin home. She shares very openly on her Facebook page, and I absolutely love her vulnerability and her candor. It really has made me aware of things that I had no idea about. And I just love watching her family. There's just so much to learn and so much to love about it. So thank you so much, Kelsey, for joining us. I'm so excited to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is so fun. And I feel so excited to get to share our story too, and just to create more awareness, like you said, and what you're doing is awesome. So I'm honored to be here and excited to chat.
Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Totally. So I'm 30 years old. I have a form of dwarfism called hypochondroplasia. I am the only LP in my family. And my family is kind of complicated. So on my mom's side, I have two younger siblings. And then on my dad's side, I have two older siblings. So I'm the youngest, the oldest, the middle, and the only between my entire family. And I'm the only LP, like I was saying. And I born and raised here in Colorado. I've loved it here. I never plan on leaving. And then my husband, Brent, is also an LP. He has achondroplasia, and we go way back. So Brent and so Brent's mom actually would help families who had children who had recently gotten diagnosed with dwarfism. She would be there to answer all the questions and just help create a group of local families that would be there for each other and for continued LPA meetings. So Brent's known me since I was 2-3 years old, and his mom has obviously known me since then too. And so Brent and I reconnected back at a regional. I went to a regional to meet some other LPs as I was getting older. We said hey, and then we kind of just went our own ways. And then back in November of 2009, Brenton asked me to a Bronco game. And I was like, oh, sure, okay, sure, sweet. So we went, and then after the Bronco game, we're like, hey, let's hang out again. And the rest is history, as they say, with him and I. So we've been together since November 2009, and we got married in September on September 1st of 2012. So yeah,
that's awesome. How's the weather up there? It's hot down here.
So, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. It was almost 80 degrees last week, on one of the days, and it's average. They say average, but the average is supposed to be in the mid to low 50s. And snow, we should be getting snow. We're up in the mountains, and there's a little bit of snow on the ground, but nothing it's just on some grassy surfaces. But Colorado, as long as the sun's shining here, it's super dry, it makes such a big difference. We were out taking the dogs for a walk earlier, and it's 30 degrees, but you could take off your jacket and be somewhat comfortable even in that, just because we have the dry, it's the dry cold, I guess.
Yeah. That does make a difference when it gets. So we are wet all the time. I live on the coast,
totally.
So we are wet all the time, and totally. So that makes the heat hotter, and then it makes the cold colder. So
and then after it rains, and then it gets humid, right?
It's it's like a sauna. Yeah. So tell us. I guess let's just start with how you guys decided to go the route of adoption.
Absolutely. So Brett and I have actually talked about adoption since the very beginning. We're okay, if we're having trouble to conceive, and then we went through the factors of double dominancy, which we can get through in a little bit here too. But adoption has just always been on our plate from the beginning. And Brent actually, and he stepped out for a minute, but I'll have to have him like confirm the details. But I know like when he was growing up, he had told his mom that he was gonna like adopt 9 children. And so far we have 1. I'm not planning to adopt 9 necessarily, but I know adoption has always been on his heart too. And so when we were unable to conceive, like I was having trouble getting pregnant. I had a couple chemical pregnancies. And so we just decided, hey, like, let's look into adoption. Like, we know it's going to be a long road, but like, let's start. Like, there's got to be a starting point here. And so I just Googled like local adoption agencies, and we had happened to come across one that was like from our old house. It was like 10, well, I guess because we had lived in the other house already. So it was like 20 minutes from our house. So it was very local. And so we just oh, do they need, sorry, I think they have a key. Okay, sorry. Create the kids. Okay, but so we just decided to meet with our adoption agency and kind of see where we need to go from here. And so the first step was doing the home study. So we're like, okay, like let's get on board because we knew it was going to be a long process. So we started the home study, and then we had as we were starting the adoption process, Brent's stepdad had passed away, and he had done some work over in the country of Colombia. And so we had decided, we'll look into Colombia for adoption. And so after the Colorado side was done, we started the Colombia dossier and we had gotten all registered. And one of the biggest things I've learned along the way is each country is completely different with how they, like with all like what they require and how they go about the process. And so Colombia, like we had to do psychological interviews. We had to go through a lot of other different tests before we were approved by them. And it was intense. And then, so we got registered with them, and then our agency was like, so we know you guys, because Brent and I had always wanted to adopt an LP. Like that was just, we have the resources here. We have the knowledge, the doctors, we have like our local community, LPA community, and then we have like the regional LPA community, and then we have the national LPA community. And so many connections with different doctors that we knew, like we just knew like that was on our hearts, that we wanted to adopt a child with dwarfism. And so there was no waiting child in Colombia, unfortunately, with dwarfism at the time. So our agency was like, hey, we just opened up with Armenia. Would you guys be willing to switch? But there was a family trying to pursue the adoption of Calvin. So Brent and I were like, we don't feel like it's our place to step in front of them. So we're going to step back and just stay with Colombia for now and like keep us updated. And if I'm talking too much, let me know if you want to know. Okay.
No, you're fine.
Okay. And so we stepped back and just waited for Colombia, nothing, and so when Brent's grandmother passed away, we got very blessed, and so we were able to financially as well stay with Colombia, but like get off like the it was kind of complicated. Like you have to like get off the immigration for Colombia, but you can still be like registered with them. And so we did like the paperwork for that. And then our agency was like, we found out that Armenia and Canada, which is where this family was trying to adopt Calvin from, do not do adoptions. Like their countries just don't. Yeah. And so we were like, okay, so it's like, is this like a green light? Like we just wanted to make sure we weren't going to step in front of them. And they're like, yes, like go for it. And so we did the paper chase. And so we had to do a bunch of different approvals. Like we had to take Colombia off and like off our home study and get approved for Armenia. And we had to get like the immigration for Armenia too. So once all that happened, we went and we met Calvin in February of 2019. And so, yeah, it was kind of like a whirlwind. It was like, and like, it's like a stop and go process. It's like a paper chase, like high anxiety, like, oh my gosh, like, I hope we can, get all of our ducks in a row to like, okay, now we wait for like 3-4 months.
How long between when you guys decided to, or, when you found out that the Canada Armenia thing and you're like, okay, well, now we'll step in, and then you guys meeting Calvin?
That had to have been, Brent, do you know how long that was between Calvin and like when we 6 months, 6 months of a time
Okay.
frame. So it was like a little like, it felt like a year, but it was about 5 to 6 months. Sounds about right.
Yeah. And then, but when you guys finally got to meet him, it was still, did you know, like, okay, we're meeting him and this is going to be a deal, or was it
Totally.
like?
So we knew as soon as we were given the green light, like that we were going to adopt Calvin. Like that was we just knew like he was just meant to be, despite like some obstacles of some things, and he was just always meant to be ours. And so the day we met him, we asked our in-country coordinator who was facilitating the adoptions at the time, like, can we go like sign the paper? So like they know, like over there it's called the Ministry of Justice. So the Ministry of Justice, which is, you can see my background, this was the day, Brent took this picture the day we met Calvin, of Armenia, of Republic Square, right? Yeah. So in the background on here, and so we knew this day that he was just meant to be ours, and so we submitted a letter to their Ministry of Justice saying we would like to continue the process to adopt Calvin. So yeah, the day we met him, February 5th of 2019.
Wow. So and we were Facebook friends then. I think we had just started being Facebook friends, because, and to see, I was nervous for you.
Totally. We were so nervous too. And so what's, you like, I don't know, like when we met him, like I had pictures like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, he's going to be so excited. But no, he was so scared, which is actually, I've learned so much along the way, and like attachment, and like they prepare you for all that. But like, that was actually a really good thing. But he was hysterical, the poor sweet boy, when we met him, because he had never had a visitor. And so I still to this, I will forever remember, like the orphanage had a very distinct smell to it. It's always like, they were always like boiling down food, and that's what it smelled like boiled down cabbage. And I will never forget, like when we walked in the room, he was in the corner, and like we knew, like as soon as we blinked, we knew there he was. But he cried hysterically and ran to his nannies, because he's like, who are these people? Like, why are they here? Why are they so excited to see me? Like, I've never experienced that before. And so it took a couple days. So we spent our first trip in February of 2019, we spent 10 days there. And we were not allowed to go to the orphanage on the weekends, because that's when a lot of families who don't have custody of their children are allowed to go visit their children that are in the orphanage. So there were only like 4 kids in Calvin's room that were available of the 10 for adoption. All the other children, their parental rights had been relinquished, but some of them were allowed visits on the weekends. So and so we were allowed to see him. We went morning and afternoon, like after breakfast, and then all the way up till after lunch. And then we were allowed in the afternoon from like 4 to 6. We were allowed to be there after everybody had napped and everybody was awake and ready to roll for the day. So
how long did it take him to get used to you guys visiting?
So it probably took like 2 or 3 days of morning and afternoon visits to fully and it was so sweet. Like the other orphanage kids would get so excited when we got there, because they knew. So his birth name was David. And so they would, as soon as they saw us coming down the long hallway, they would yell at Calvin, David. They'd be like, David, mommy, papa, as we were walking down. And so they would get so excited even for us to come visit, because they knew we were going to hang out with them too. It was so sweet. And so that was one of the harder parts of leaving too, was knowing, leaving all those children behind, because I wish all of them could have loving homes. But yeah, probably a couple of days. And so after our first visit, when we went back, after the paperwork approval and our court date was set, it was another round of, he was it was about one day though where he was really upset. Like the first day we came back after that trip, he was very upset because he's like, okay, these people are, you know, he didn't understand because we were here for like 10 days and then we left and we didn't come back for February, March, April, like 3.5, 4 months. And so he's like, okay, like he had no idea what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And how old was he?
So at the time, so he was 2. And so we got him right about a month before his 3rd birthday is when he was officially, became a U.S. citizen. So.
How old was he when he was put into the home?
So he was relinquished. He was diagnosed at the hospital 2 months. So his parents, he had 2 average height biological parents. They were married. They took him home after he was born, normal pregnancy, no complications, they didn't notice any like measurements in utero that were like shorter limbs or anything. So they took him home about 2 months after they took him home. They took him to the doctor and they were noticing his shorter limbs. And that's when he was officially diagnosed with achondroplasia dwarfism.
Mm-hmm.
And then 8 days later, after his diagnosis, they relinquished him to the local hospital. And then the local hospital placed him at Nork, which was his orphanage in Armenia. So wow. That was intense. And we don't know much about his biological mother and father. We don't know if he had any siblings or anything. We knew that his biological father was a taxi driver, and his biological mother, we didn't know anything about her. So that's about all the extent of that we know at this time of his family. But they never visited though, which was one of the harder things for us to hear for almost 3 years of his life, to never have a visitor and to see kids coming and going in the orphanage. When we were there, we actually witnessed one of the sweet girls in his room. Her biological mother had come to take her home. She had all the paperwork together, she had done whatever she needed to do, and this little girl was so excited. And so that was such a heartwarming thing out of all the loss that all these kids have been through and trauma, to be able to witness that little bit of happiness, at least for one of the sweet girls. So that was intense.
Is it commonplace for children with skeletal dysplasia or other conditions like that to be relinquished?
Totally. So with Armenia, which I've learned throughout this journey, is one of the countries where children with disabilities, it's like children with disabilities are looked at as a stigma. So in its dwarfism, it's a lot. We saw quite a few children, and I've become really good friends with a couple of families who have adopted from Calvin's orphanage who had their children have Down syndrome. That's a big one. So any kind of physical or mental cerebral palsy was a big one. There was a sweet boy in Calvin's room who was deaf and had cerebral palsy, who, if we could adopt him, this sweet boy, I pray one day he finds the family, because he's just the most loving, kind kid. And just, we were able to not be, even though we couldn't talk to him, being able to just be there and just give him as much love as we could was just, that was intense. Mm-hmm. But Armenia is definitely one of the countries where the physical differences is definitely looked at as a stigma.
In the family. Goodness.
Yeah.
So you went back a few months later, and how did that trip go?
So that was interesting. So we got our court date, we had but on the day that we were given our court date, we had 8 days until we needed to be until we were told we needed to be at court. So it was a scramble, but we knew that was going to possibly happen. So we kind of had everything, our ducks in a row enough to be able to go. So we got our dog sitter lined up. We got all packed up, ready to go. Calvin's room had been ready for months, so that was all set and ready to go. And then we kind of kept Brent's mom in the loop. So Brent's mom was always planning on coming to Armenia at some point with us. So she was kind of on standby of okay, let me know how this goes and when I can come, and because she wanted to help bring Calvin home and see his homeland too. And so we left, and our court date was originally set for May 20th. And so we got there like May 17th, got all settled. We saw Calvin on the morning and afternoon again, and which is like I was talking about earlier, which was when he was like hesitant again, but then that was pretty short-lived on that trip, which was good. And so our court date, May 20th, the morning of our court, the ex-president in Armenia had been released from jail, and he was accused of corruption, among other things. And so the current president told the people of Armenia to take to the streets to protest. And so with that, he had ordered all the courts to be closed. And like literally like, and the time frame on that was like, it was like 8 to noon, and our court time was 10 a.m. So we're like, oh gosh. So our in-country coordinator was like, okay, like let's go get Calvin. Let's just go and see, like let's see what's going on. So we show up to the courtroom, and to the court, and we were in the taxi, and it was getting pretty intense. Like there were quite a few people there ready to protest. And so they had told us for our own safety that it would be wise to leave. And that court was not happening that morning. And so we left, and we were super bummed because we were like, okay, like now what? Like, what do we do? And so we went back to the orphanage, and we waited, and our in-country coordinator was able to get us a new court date, but it was for a week later. So luckily, I mean, we had time. So that was, I mean, Brent was on summer break by then. And so we knew like, okay, like we're not going anywhere. Like we'll wait a week. So we did our morning and afternoon visits with Calvin at the orphanage. And then we went to court. And typically you meet with the judge like 1 to 2 times. Well, we met with her 5 times throughout how many days? Like 6 days. We were expecting like to meet with her 1 to, like I was saying, 1 to 2 times, but then having her give us the custody of Calvin like the next day. It's all due to but because of the conflict and the corruption, all the judges were being overlooked with like a fine-tooth comb. So they needed to like make sure like, and nothing towards her, but she had to like justify her job and like justify why Calvin became ours essentially, and make sure like that we weren't lying, that we were fit. And so she asked us like the same questions throughout those 5-6 times. Yeah. And so we're like, and so finally, like a couple, like the first like 1 or 2 like morning and afternoons, we're like, okay. But like finally, like our country coordinator and our lawyer was like, okay, like what else do you need to know? Like these guys have all their ducks in a row. They're more than qualified. They've been approved on our side in Armenia, like the Ministry of Justice. One of the steps with adoption in Armenia is the Ministry of Justice, or the minister, or who signs off on it? The Prime Minister. Sorry, thank you. The Prime Minister has to approve it. And so that was one of the final steps before we were able to travel for court, and before the court date was issued. That was the final step. And so we had to, we're like, what else do you guys need? And so she's like, okay. So I will give you guys my decision tomorrow at noon. Like, and so we're like, okay, like, so she finally was able, so that Friday, so May 30th, I think it was May 30th, she finally issued custody to Calvin. And so that Friday we ran around like wild turkeys and got all of our paperwork that we could do, everything that we could get done without him, because we knew like once we had him, like it was going to be like, we didn't know how he was going to, there were a lot of firsts, which I'll go into in a little bit, that we had to get all of our ducks in a row. So finally on June 1st, we took him from the orphanage, and that was tough too, and traumatic for him and his nannies. Like his nannies, they are such a blessing. Like they have, I mean, these women, they make, how much money do they make? They make $200 a month, and they have 24-hour shifts at the orphanage, a couple days a week. I mean, they are angels. What? 3 or 4 days a week. Yeah. 24-hour shifts. So we got to know them very closely throughout our time visiting And so they were very heartbroken. And Calvin, he had no, like, so when we left, and he had ridden in the car one other time with us to go to court, but like when he left, like that was like his first time out in public, and in a car. Like we were there for the first time he rode in a car, among a lot of other things. So
Wow.
yeah, that was our wild. It was pretty nerve-wracking because we're like, like we were talking to our agency here as everything was going on there. And we're like, so like we're gonna get him, right? Like this is not gonna jeopardize any of
Yeah.
our adoption, and now they're in a whole new ball game of conflict right now in Armenia, and adoptions, they're under martial law, and so adoptions are halted right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so they have such a unique, it's very a very unique, complicated history, and so yeah, we were worried at one point. We're like, okay, like Calvin's gonna come home with us, like on this trip, right? And so
Yeah, I was
thank
gonna
God.
ask, like during that time, was there a point where you were like, okay, wait, is this actually not
There
gonna happen?
was, honestly. And so and that's why like we contacted our agency, because our agency did not, I mean, nobody knew this was really going to happen, but our agency certainly didn't prepare us for that. And so they, like, when we were telling them what was happening, they didn't really know what advice to give us, even, because they're like, like what, and they were on the other side of the world. And so that was definitely nerve-wracking too. But to know, but she convinced us. She's like our agency here, she's like, like we have lawyers, we have all the legal documents, like you guys, he'll be yours. We just have to ride this little turnout until,
Wow.
so
Well, I'm glad you guys got in there before. I mean, it sounds like you
yes,
got in just in time.
we truly did. And so now we have some friends that I've met through actually Instagram, through adoption, of friends who just adopted a sweet girl from Calvin's orphanage. But so Armenia is in conflict with Azerbaijan right now, and there's a piece of land that they're fighting over. And Armenia's president just basically told the people, we're giving up. And the people are not okay with that. And there's been a lot of lives lost on Armenia's side. And so there's a lot of deep conflict right now going on, and it's not good over there right now. So we're so blessed with our timing, and with the family that we know, with their timing of their sweet girl who has Down syndrome. Sweetest little, she just stood up for the first, like the orphanage said she wasn't even walking, or not walking, she wasn't even like crawling or standing up for anything. She's been home 2 weeks, she's already bear crawling and standing up. Like
Oh.
it just shows like a loving family, and like the resources we have here,
Mhm.
and like physical therapy and everything is just like, this little girl's life is just she's gonna soar. So it's so cool to see.
What kind of things have you seen with Calvin in that sense, as far as, I mean, like you mentioned
Totally.
first, I mean, his first airplane ride was international, like, you know,
Yes, and
so,
he was so, like, he did so good at, like, we actually stayed at a hotel there the entire time, which I think is, where's the hotel in the back, I don't know if you can,
We're
in our background,
the
but
pictures from the hotel.
looking out. Okay, so the picture of my background's from the hotel looking forward. But we brought him to the hotel, and he slept like 11 hours each night. Great sleeper. He transitioned so well. The only thing that where he did not sleep was on the airplane ride. So it was about 24 hours from leaving Armenia to when we landed here in Denver. And he got, but like he wasn't like, I'm trying to remember, like he was pretty calm and like okay, but like if he wasn't sleeping, we weren't sleeping. And so I think he was just taking it all in. And like this sweet boy had gone through so much of like leaving the orphanage, going to like doctor's appointments, to to getting his passport photo, to getting all of our documents so we could travel and bring him home, to then getting on airplane after airplane after airplane, and then walking in our door and meeting our dogs for the first time even was very overwhelming for him. Yeah, that was, and now they're best friends, so that's good.
what did the dogs think?
Totally. So we had one of our good friends had made a blanket for Calvin, and she also made these had knitted these like little scent pads. And so what we had done was we brought the scent pads with us to Armenia, and we had put them on Calvin, just like on his shoulder, on his clothing, and his hair, just and put it in his jacket, and just tried to get his scent on there. And we put it in like a clean plastic bag and brought it home with us in February. And so we had the dogs, because we have basset hounds, and they love smelling everything, and they're sniffers. And so we had gotten a couple times, we took out those the scent pads, but that didn't really help him or help them, because they were so excited to see us too, because they're like attached to the hip. They're with us all the time too. And so when we had gotten home, it was like 7:00 at night. We were all so jet lagged. And so our dogs bark loud and clear. And so they had gone berserk. And so poor Calvin was overwhelmed to be at our house, let alone have these dogs. So we hadn't really thought that through like we should have maybe. I mean, but we were all just so excited. I mean, Brent and I were so happy to be home with him. And then our dogs were so excited for us to be home. So it took so after that had happened, we put him in our room and kind of like shut him off. And then we did slow introductions, and now he chases them and walks them and pulls their tail. They tolerate it, you know. I mean, he loves to walk them now.
And you have another one coming.
Yes. So my husband Brent has decided that for every human we need a dog. So we have 2. So now we need 3. I'm like, oh, good Lord. And so Calvin is undertaking the responsibility over probably since COVID started. We try and do daily walks with the dogs. And so he will pick up after them, and he walks them, and they're pretty strong. So we've learned to put one of the shorter leashes on them, and then we have a longer leash. So each dog kind of has 2 leashes. But then he feels like he's helping and walking them and getting like that responsibility. But at the same time, it's like, we know, like, okay.
Yeah, he's not going to get drugged down the street.
Right. They're not going anywhere too far. So it's all good. So yeah, adding one more to this chaoticness. But it should be fun. Should give him a good responsibility of growing up, picking up after him, and being besties. So yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. What does Calvin think about? Have you guys gone skiing yet at your new place?
Not yet. So we're here now. We're taking him up for the first time on Tuesday, Wednesday. We're going to try and see how it goes. He's very excited. We've shown him like videos and pictures, and he's seen pictures of Brent doing it. And he's a very sporty kid. So he loves doing his scooter at home, his bicycle at home. He's got incredible balance. So we're very hopeful. Hopefully, I mean, if he doesn't, he doesn't. But we're very hopeful and encouraging. I think at least once he does it a couple times and gets the hang of it, I think he's gonna love it. So it'll be fun to really get him. And Brent's a skier, so we're gonna try skiing first with Calvin and see if he likes it. We can always switch to boarding. I snowboard. I'm horrible, but I like it. So we'll see. But at least Calvin and I will kind of be on the same level of like. I feel like I'm gonna have to learn how to board again, anyways. So.
That's so funny. Yeah, you don't have to be good at it to enjoy it. So
exactly. And there's other people, and especially now, like, so they're limiting. We have to like get our pass ahead of time, like get a reservation, and like social, everything is very well practiced and very well mandated, like, and everything. So at least there won't be too many people like watching us wipe out or something. They'll at least be 6 feet apart, so we'll be good. We'll be good.
That's funny. That is funny.
We're excited.
So what would you, actually, wait, I was going to ask one question, but let's talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, about some of your struggles with fertility.
Totally. Yes. So so since Brent and I have dwarfism, it comes, and I get my stats mixed up a little bit. So feel free to, I think I have them right. So
oh no, did I lose you? Oh no.
%25% chance of an average child. So we tried to like naturally get pregnant, and then it wasn't, and I'm a big stressor. So I was stressing about it like all the time. And so we kind of had just put it on the back burner. And then I had found out I had my first miscarriage, gosh, back in March of, it was before the adoption of Calvin, 2018, March of 2018. And that one, we had heard the heartbeat and everything. I was about 7 weeks, and I went back in and for just like a routine appointment, and there was no heartbeat. And so I had never, like, I had never experienced like I had never, I don't know how to put this, but like we had never, trying to figure out how to word this. I didn't know what to expect with my miscarriage. And I think that it's a very quiet topic among women. There's a lot of like people are afraid to talk about it. And so I had learned through that experience. Honestly, I had to Google some things, and I wasn't sure, like, is this normal? Am I feeling this? And like after just like mourning what I'd gone through, like, is that normal? And so I did do some counseling and stuff. And I just feel like as women, like it needs to be talked about more, and it needs to be more, we need to create more awareness, because it's traumatic what we go through, like losing a child and losing that hope. And we had held on, like after we heard that on the first miscarriage, that heartbeat, that was a really rough one. Just because like they, and like I looked up, like I got on Google after we heard the heartbeat, like what are the statistics of like, after you hear the heartbeat of like not miscarrying. And so unfortunately we had fallen in that category, the small category of a miscarriage from that. And then and even after you get through that hurdle, it's the double dominant hurdle, and like the testing for that's also very tough. And so we've learned along the way that, I feel like the more I talk about it, it's also a form of healing for me to know like we're not alone, and it is okay to talk about it. And it is, like I didn't know I was gonna bleed for a month. Like I had no idea to expect that. And after that was happening, my doctor was like, yeah, that's your body's like transition. Yeah, it's normal, among other things too. And so I really feel like that and like after going through that, I think we really wanted to pursue adoption as well, because like just giving my body time to heal and me time to heal too, and moving forward. And we had really wanted to start our family, so we're very lucky to get Calvin. And recently I had a miscarriage as well. I was very hopeful on that one too, and it just wasn't there. So
Yeah, it is so much more common than we realize, and I think speaking about it is key, because it's so painful, and it feels very lonely.
totally.
I was married, and we tried for 2 years to get pregnant, and we couldn't. And we did IUI,
Okay.
and then, which is just the intrauterine fertilization,
Okay.
not where it's not IVF, and we decided we didn't want to go that route,
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons. And so we
Absolutely.
just kind of accepted that we weren't going to have kids, and we just kind of moved on as best as you can.
Right.
And
Right.
and then I wasn't feeling well, and I was tired, and went to the doctor, not ever thinking that they were going to say I was pregnant, because we couldn't have kids. And
Right.
um, yeah, and then ended up being pregnant, and that was with Aiden. And
Okay.
we had had a miscarriage during that time, before that, and then we had Aiden, and then had miscarriage in between Aiden and DL, and
Okay.
then had DL, had a miscarriage between DL and Malika, had Malika, and then had a miscarriage after Malika.
Oh wow.
Um,
Oh man.
so in the first time, it was I spoke about the pregnancy before the magical 12 weeks,
Okay. Yep.
and Jesus, that was brutal, because everybody's so excited for you, and they're asking how it's going, and then you have to tell
Right.
them.
You're like, well
And
now.
yeah,
Totally.
and not only are you having to tell them and you're feeling bad because of it, but then you're having to console them because they feel bad.
They feel bad for asking you how it's going, and then it's like, oh, well, it's not go. Well, it didn't go right. So it's like a whole whirlwind. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I know. I remember my mom was like, don't tell anyone. And I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. And then it's like, yeah. And then it's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the lesson that I learned from that too is like, after opening up about it, I realized how many of my friends, even how many women close to me, have gone through it. Like, I had no idea. And then like the different, like my last one was an ectopic pregnancy, and I didn't even know what that was again until I Googled it. So it's like after going through even like like a chemical pregnancy to an ectopic to a molar pregnancy, which was my last one before my ectopic, like having all that knowledge now going forward is like, wow, like I had no idea.
Yeah, and you don't, once you start talking about it, then people are like, oh yeah, I've been through that. And there's various stages, even with me, I had one, the first one was like the one you spoke of where you had the heartbeat and everything. But my numbers were dropping, but I was in such denial. I was like, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be
like
fine.
Everything's good. Like, right.
Yeah. And then the next one, you kind of have more of an idea of what to expect. And, but the more you talk about it, the more others are like, yeah, I've had that. I've done that. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then it sounds, odd, but it really just knowing that helps you not feel so alone. And I think part of it is sometimes we feel, I don't want to say we feel like a failure, but at the same time we kind of do.
Oh,
but
totally.
Even though we know,
no, you feel like, what did I do wrong? Like, what didn't I do? Did I drink enough water? Did I get, it's like, what did my body not do right to make this work when I knew I was pregnant,
Yeah.
I agree. Absolutely.
So I really appreciate that you have been so outspoken about it, because I know that you have helped many, and I hate it for you, and I hope that you guys can conceive one day, because Calvin will be the best big brother ever. I just know it.
And I love your baby. Can't talk today. I love your beautiful children too. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
They're growing up quick too. Oh my gosh.
I know. They do that.
So fun. No, absolutely. We have such blessings. Out of our tough times, we have such blessings though too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you tell someone, what kind of advice would you give someone who is considering going the adoption route?
Totally. So I would say, I support that 110%. I would say one of the biggest things that I've learned from it is the hurry up and wait deal. I mean, that was really tough on us, because we're like, okay, like paperwork approval, like we're ready to go, right? And then they're like, no, that's step 1A of one, we have to get to 1F essentially, So it's like the hurry up and wait was tough on me. And with Calvin, so it was, and I've learned a couple of things, but like with Calvin's adoption with Armenia and like the multiple trips, that was really that, like when we got home, like Brent, like when we landed, Brent, my husband, sobbed, like because we had left a piece of our heart, in Armenia, and like that was like traumatic for us to go through, to be at home. Like we didn't want to be home because Calvin wasn't there. So to prepare your hearts, if it is like a multiple trip country, I know some countries you just do one trip and you bring your child home, but if it is a multiple country trip, multiple country adoption, to really try and prepare yourself as much as possible, like when you're coming home, because that was rough on us. And a lot of there's a lot of adoption grants out there. There's a tax refund. So I know a lot of people are afraid because of the cost, and it is expensive, but there's different routes you can take, different grants you can apply for to adopt as well. So that was a big one too.
What so LPA, I know, provides some assistance in that area.
So you can apply, how much?
1,000 and 5,000 if they're.
So it's once you have your child home with LPA, you can apply and you are granted $1,000,
At least.
right? At least $1,000, depending on different factors. How old they are. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting the facts from Brent because I'm terrible at remembering those kind of things. So depending on how old they are, you can get up to $1,000 from LPA once they're home. And then what's the other? Is there another one or no?
We did the Adopting Lawyers Association.
There's different local ones that you can look into for your state.
There's a
bunch of different ones through your state you can look into too. We did one through our state, through private organizations too. But yeah, LPA was we were very, very, very blessed to get that from LPA.
So are you guys heavily involved in LPA? I know that you were growing up. So are you still?
So our chapter is so small, and it's interesting because Colorado, like Denver is a big state, but once Calvin's in school, I definitely want to get involved with our chapter more. Well, yeah, we are. So we're Santa and Mrs. Claus every year. Brent doesn't want me to forget. So we're involved in that, but definitely I thought about doing like a president of our state, of our local chapter in the near future for sure. But we definitely have kids that travel. So like the Christmas party is, as I'm sure with like you guys as well, is the biggest turnout usually every year. So going to be a bummer to not do that this year. And last year we got Calvin involved with Mr. and Mrs. Claus too. And I don't think he really knew. He's starting to understand Santa this year. Last year he didn't really understand Santa. He had been home like 6 months. And so he didn't really understand why we had a tree with presents under it on Christmas. But we try to get him. So we definitely, I want to get involved more in the future for sure. But Brent's mom was involved. She until recently, like she taught like sewing classes and did a bunch of volunteer work with our local, and she, because of Brent, actually she had her own seamstress. She had her own seamstress business for over 30 years. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So that was cool.
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, I definitely want to be involved more in the near future for sure.
Yeah, this year has been weird. So I just got involved last year myself, and we just established a chapter in Mississippi a couple months ago for the first time in decades. And so so we have one chapter for the whole state because our population, as we know of is not that concentrated. Of course, it's hard to know if they're not involved in LPA. It's hard for them to know about LPA if LPA is not around. So it's kind of.
That's awesome though that you guys are getting up and going now and getting. Yeah, no, that's huge.
Yeah, so we did a Halloween Zoom last month, and we're doing a Thanksgiving Zoom today. Actually,
that's right. Yeah, you're gonna host that. That'll be fun.
Yeah, it will. It will. I'm very much looking forward to things settling and us being able to meet in person. But yeah,
but yeah, no, for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I really think it's neat that they offer those grants. And I've seen, emails where there are children who are about to age out, and they kind of give a push for
LPA can double their grant. Yeah. That's another thing that's so heartbreaking in some countries is the aging out process of these sweet kids. I mean, that's yeah. So LPA definitely did. And it's interesting too, like advocacy, like so many countries have I forget the name of, like, there's like a name for it, but like you cannot, like we couldn't like our agents, or we can't advocate for kids from Calvin's orphanage. Like we can't go like take a picture of, let's say, Bob and be like please adopt Bob. Like we just, it's just, which is hard because it's like
yeah, that's interesting.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to, is there anything else regarding the adoption stuff or infertility or anything else that we didn't cover?
No, time, as you know, with kids, you blink and like he's been home almost a year and a half now, and time flies. But Yeah, we definitely, one of the big things that's another really cool thing with Calvin though is that he has dual citizenship. So so with Armenia and the US. So one thing that we're definitely wanting to always, and we get asked this often actually, is always honor his Armenian roots. So we definitely want to take him back. Our first trip, we're planning on taking him back when he's 5, and then 10, and then every 5 years we want to go back and show him his homeland and honor that. Because I think that's a big piece of who these sweet children are, and that they have the, yeah. So we definitely want to honor that. Yeah, other
that's
than that,
wonderful.
yeah.
Okay, so I usually close out with this question. It's
Okay.
not really related to what we've been talking about specifically, but you being hypo and Brent being acon, and Brent can answer his own answer too if he wants that.
Okay.
Side. So what is and Brent's a teacher, so I'm sure he's heard some things. So what is the most ridiculous or funny or absurd thing that anyone has said to you regarding your dwarfism?
Regarding my dwarfism, ridiculous thing. Oh, I've been with friends before, and they ask my friends who are my age if I'm their child. Like, that's been pretty ridiculous. That's probably about as ridiculous for me. What about you? Here's Brent.
Hello. So this was like several lives ago before Calvin, but we were in Jamaica. And we were at Bob Marley's birthplace. And so a bunch of the locals were like looking at all the tourists at the museum and everything and laughing at us, Kelsey and me specifically. And so I yelled up at them, since we're at Bob Marley's place, we may be short, but we can get high. And this one like old lady started like rolling down the hill in laughter.
Like physically,
it accomplished exactly what I wanted it to. So I was pretty.
And it kind of ended all like the stares and the questions. That was like, oh.
They respected us after that.
Yeah, you nailed that for sure. Oh, is Calvin there? Can we say hi to him?
Yeah, let's go grab him.
No pants on.
Oh, Brent said he has no pants on. That's okay. We'll put him.
Fine. It's shoulders up. It's fine.
As you know, like with boys, like they're
Yeah.
Calvin, come here.
Come get on camera.
Come here. Come say hi.
What made y'all choose the name Calvin?
It was the first name that Brent and I had agreed on. Brent is old school. Like he wanted like old school names. And I was like, no. So finally I'd heard Calvin. Oh, he really is like naked from the waist down. I'd heard Calvin actually from, this is funny, but one of the Today Show, I used to watch it more. I don't really watch it much anymore. One of the Today Show anchors Dylan Dreyer had named her son Calvin, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that name. And so there's Calvin. Oh, where's Calvin? Where's Calvin? There's Calvin.
Hi.
Say hi. Did he freeze? Can you freeze? Can you say hi? Can you say hi?
There you go.
Where's Calvin? Say hi.
Hi.
Can you wave? Can you wave? Oh, you're so shy. Oh my goodness.
That's so cute.
No, don't press buttons. Okay, yep. He loves pressing buttons. Like if Brent's in meetings, if like at our office at home, if we don't like vlog it, oh my god. So yeah. It was the first name that Brent and I just agreed on. There's no meaning in that. We moved his given birth name of, I'll get down in just a minute. We moved his given birth name of David to his middle name, hyphened with Brent's dad who passed away. So it's Calvin David Richard Harris. It was just no me, and it was actually one of the names too that we knew that nobody was gonna misspell. To an extent, and we actually had, when we were translating his name from Armenian to English, because of the Armenian alphabet, it had translated to Kelvin, Kelvin.
Oh, yeah.
We had to just do a little name switch there. But after that, hopefully there'll be no misspellings for sure. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Angela. It's so good to talk to you.
Yes, it was so good. This is such a great conversation. And if anybody watching has any questions, like I said, Kelsey is an open book. And so just post your comments below. She is happy to share in any way she can. And same for myself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Angela. You guys have a happy Thanksgiving.
Bye. Thank you. You
Bye.
too. Bye.
Bye.